Today's episode 243 of the Life of Champ podcast. We're going to be discussing the curse of young competence. Now, this is going to be one that hopefully you can relate with. And if you cannot relate with this, then I feel bad for you truly. But if you do not know who I am, my name is Champ, and I help men win. And I'm going to be hopefully relating to an experience that you're going through right now, an experience that I've been going through for the last couple years. And hopefully we can have a good conversation. Make sure you can follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, and Kick as well at Life of a Champ podcast on every single platform. So tap in with that for sure. But getting into it, man. I want to start right here. The curse of young competence. Now, this can be viewed in many different ways. This can be viewed positively. This can be viewed negatively. And in my perspective, in my experience, I'd say socially, it is definitely a curse, right? The curse of young competence, right? So I believe that people that are young, that are able to mature, let's just say much earlier on than most people, they have what I perceive to be a disadvantage, right? So they have the advantage of obvious young age, which is a complete advantage, of course. But in the same breath, they also have a disadvantage because now it's going to be much harder to relate with people that are going to be their age. And that has been my experience, right? I feel like I haven't had as good of an experience as I possibly could have with the people around me, even though I've had a good time and I've had a lot of great people as well. But I feel like I've also, in a way, have been limiting myself to some of these experiences just because, it's not something that I'm the most particularly interested in, right? Or let's just say the conversations or whatever's going on isn't as interesting to me compared to my fellow people that are my age. Right, and I want to give a disclaimer. Right, I'm obviously not the most mature, and I'm obviously not the youngest anymore as well, for sure. So, to give you a little bit of backstory, I started my self-improvement journey around 17. So that was just researching a lot of different topics, and essentially just adding and viewing wisdom from other people. Right, and I feel like that definitely gave me a lot more years and a lot more perspectives when it comes to just maturing in general. So I began to, when you're learning from people that are much older, that have plenty of wisdom, it now makes you really reflect on the young phase of people's lives, right? I feel like obviously through the experience of young people, obviously they're just trying to figure things out. They're trying to map out the world for themselves. And in the same breath, they are almost given little responsibility and a little accountability for their actions, right? And I think this is interesting, right? People usually chalk up immaturity to, oh, well, he's young, right? But what if you were mature and you're still young, right? Those people, I feel like you get the biggest advantage in some levels in this life, but in the grand scheme of everything, I believe it's going to be a curse for the reasons I will discuss today, right? So yeah, right. I was analyzing my environment. I was scanning my environment for the things in which I could have improved on. And while I was doing that, most people weren't doing that. It wasn't cool. Self-improvement, working on yourself, all this type of stuff really wasn't cool up until a few years ago. And I've been doing it since like 2018, 2019, 2017, around that time. I feel like it just went mainstream, but before it was mainstream, it was something that you really couldn't have a conversation with anybody. At least this is what I personally had felt, unless they were much older than me. But when it came to my immediate environment, all of my friends who I had things in common with, we slowly became more and more distant because I was no longer interested, and I no longer partook in activities that they truly enjoyed, and obviously that's going to take a hit socially. So I'll give you one example, right? I had decided to stop playing video games at about 18 years old. This is going to be what I believe to be an act of maturity. It's just an act of becoming a man and truly understanding that your time is much more valuable than what you're doing and what you're dedicating to a video game, right? Something that isn't real, something that is not going to give you any benefit unless you're a streamer making money off of it. But for the most part, it's going to be very much how would I like to describe it? Very much liability when it comes to your time, right? I feel like there's so much better things you could do with your time, right? And for me, I think I could have probably cut this off a little bit sooner, but quite frankly, it's not even like I didn't like video games. It's not even like I didn't enjoy playing video games. It was just when observing people that I want to be like, none of them were playing video games. So I was like, okay, it only makes sense for my natural progression to look like me not playing video games, right? So this was one thing that I'm definitely glad that I did early on. And like I said, this is just one of the many few acts, and I'll go ahead and list them out as well. But this is the curse of young competence, right? Recognizing your environment, recognizing who you want to be like, understanding that you're creating a value structure by what you give your time to, and if it doesn't exactly make sense to you, right? If you're giving time to things that don't really they don't really move the needle, they don't really elevate you, they don't really do anything for you, and they take away from you, then with lateral thinking, then it obviously makes sense over time to go ahead and get rid of that, or go ahead and lessen that at the very least. And I'd say a lot of my friends nowadays, even being a little bit older than 17, 18. I'm 23 right now. Even being a little older, it still makes you weird if you don't partake in some of these activities that are so normalized, like playing video games, like going out every single weekend, right? These decisions that I've made to consciously become different are things that it is an easy decision to an extent, but it is also a very hard decision. You're sacrificing being normal. You are essentially you're accepting the role of being weird to an extent, just because you don't fit in anymore, right? And if you do try to fit in, and of course I've seen myself do this from time to time, where I do certain things, I choose certain habits, I uphold certain identities just to be able to fit in, right? I don't even necessarily fully believe or fully want to do these certain things, but I know there's going to be a social advantage to getting along with people that are my age, and yeah, I just found myself dumbing myself down just to fit in, just to do something that's common, just to have more things in common, more conversation, and yeah, it's just a different, it's just different. It's a different experience because you mature too fast, and then no one around you moves like you, and then you're just kind of doing your own thing, and then it makes you question, hey, am I doing the right thing? Am I supposed to be doing this at this right time, right? Am I supposed to be committing and making sacrifices and taking on more responsibility when everyone around me doesn't seem so dedicated to be making those sacrifices, taking on more responsibility, right? All these things. So it makes you makes you reflect on the certain things that you do, right? And not even so much are they the right idea, rather is it the time to do it? Because no one else is doing it, right? And of course, I've done a lot of different things that I think that I will lay out today that do make me feel this curse of the young competent. So I'll give you another one for example, right? I had chosen to find a partner, or rather dedicate a lot of time and energy into finding a quality partner that fulfills all of the things in which I desire in a woman. And I had found that woman very, very early on in the game of life, when a lot of men my age are busy sleeping around. I had recognized in a period of voluntary celibacy that it is probably going to be within my best interest to no longer spend my time just sleeping around, talking to women just to talk to women, or just mess around just to mess around, right? I seen myself doing and being those specific ways, and it wasn't the most authentic thing to me personally. So that made me question my habits. That made me question what I was doing and why I was doing it. So after that period of celibacy that I had for a couple of months, right, voluntary celibacy, I have to emphasize that, it just made sense to try to find a partner. It made sense after I already knew specifically what I was looking for and what I had wanted, it made sense to only look for that, because quite frankly, anything else would be literally just wasting my time. Anything else would be settling for a lifestyle, for a decision that is essentially not what I want, and it is almost like a constellation prize for what I want. And for me, that's not necessarily good enough in certain capacities as well. That's just not good enough for me to be doing something that I know where something else can be done that's better than what I'm doing right now. So that was one of those things. And I believe that if you do live in this curse of competence, you're going to begin to question you're going to begin to question some of the actions that you've been taking in the past. Is this the right decision? Is it maybe it was once a right decision, or maybe it once felt good or felt fun, but does it still feel that same way? Does it still carry that same value as it once did, or am I wasting my time? And that's what I came to find out, is a lot of these things it was just simply wasting my time. And it's hard to admit that, because quite frankly, you don't want to be in that position where now you're forced to really reflect. You're forced to look into a mirror that says that you're better than that. You're more than what you're doing, yet you're not doing anything, or yet you're doing the same thing that you've been doing for years, right? A lot of people, they're okay with it. And here's the thing, if that's you, then maybe you can't relate to this. But quite frankly, this is for the people that do relate to this, who have made certain sacrifices, like I said, had taken on more responsibility at a young age, when you can be free of responsibility, right? And these things do change you. They do change your character. You're going to be moving different. You're going to be thinking different than everyone else around you. And like I said, that curse, the curse that I keep talking about, is just the willingness to be different, the willingness to be weird, the willingness to unintentionally stand out in certain capacities, right? So I do believe that in the ultimate grand scheme of life, I think it is within your best interest for you to mature quickly. I do understand, and I can't blame some of the people for kind of staying in their immature ways, but in the same breath, it's like, once you learn what is wrong, it is very unwise of you to move in a way that you know to be wrong, right? That just doesn't make that much sense to me. That didn't make that much sense to me. And like I said, you're almost settling for less than, when you could be pursuing what you actually want. That isn't less than. That is exactly what you're looking for, exactly what you want. And there's been a few different things that have kind of contributed to that type of mindset, that type of decision making, that I don't believe is instilled in the younger generation enough. And I'll get into these, and these are going to be common things that I talk about often. But number one is the value structure, right? Understanding that if you have a value structure, if you judge things based off of, okay, this makes me feel this way, I feel better about doing this. This makes more sense to do. The people that I'm inspired by, the people that I truly admire, they're doing this specific thing. How do I get closer to that? That is a judgment. That is a value structure, right? Now, whether you act on that value structure is up to you, but hopefully you begin to at least craft a very, very vague value structure of what you truly value, right? For me, I had figured that out. Of course, I'm still trying to figure it out as I move on with life, but I had became a lot more clear, a lot more definite with what this specifically looks like. And like I said, my actions, if I decided to do a certain thing or pursue a certain identity or uphold a certain habit, that is always going to be that judgment, that reflection, to see if I'm lined up to where I need to be. And if I'm not, then I'm going to have that judgment. I'm going to feel this pressure. I'm going to understand that it's not aligned with my value structure. And now it makes you choose different decisions. Now it makes you evaluate your character. If you're a person that is constantly repeating the same thing over and over again, it's not giving you the results that you want. It's not, like I said, it's not moving the needle, then why keep doing it, right? If you keep doing something, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's something that I see all too often, is people, they do the same thing over and over again. They want different results, but yet there's no way to get the result that they want because they're doing the same exact thing. So that is the curse of young competence, is developing that value structure, evaluating your actions based off of what you hopefully value, and understanding that if you don't change, if you don't do something, you will feel guilty, you will feel the judgment, you will feel the pain, you will feel the discomfort for making a decision like that. And some people, and I'd say I would like to think, this is my own perception, right? I would like to think that most people have this value structure of some kind, right? Even if it's misaligned, even if video games is at the top of your value structure, right, where you're dedicating your time and energy into doing that every single day, you have somewhat of a value structure. Now you must vet that value structure. How does that really apply? How does that apply to the world, right? Are any of the people that I want to be like, are they doing these certain things? And if they're doing it, how are they doing it? And maybe how are they not feeling the guilt, the shame, the judgment, the pressure that hopefully you should be feeling. To an extent, you should be feeling those specific ways. I'm going to read the comments and then I'll get back to it. I never understood why it's looked at it as weird for you to choose a path that betters your life. Initially, yeah, exactly. Of course, I feel that same exact way, but in the same breath, it's like, you must question what's normal. You must question what's conventional. You must question all these things. It only makes sense for me to question these things because, like I said, once I became very, very clear of my value structure, I understood thoroughly that my value structure, what I value, and what people say that they value, aren't exactly always the same thing. And then you understand what society values, and then you realize that you're way farther than you thought. And then, like I said, a lot of things break down from there, right? There's a lot more questions that need to be asked. And honestly, a lot more dissatisfying answers came to the conclusion to. And what I had found out, and what I'm continuing to understand, is most people aren't interested in the things that I am truly enamored by. That's just what it is. There's certain things that I have interest in that I really can't get out of conversation of other people that are around my age. I have to either number one, nobody around me has having that conversation or wants to have that conversation or wants to do these certain things. So that's already going to be a disconnect. And then, like I said, I try my best to relate to them, and consequently, of course, putting myself down, right, dumbing myself down just to try to fit in. For me personally, unfortunately, I've done that probably a little bit more than I'm willing to admit, or rather, I'd like to admit. But in the same breath, it's like you want to be able to get along with people, right? That's that social inclusion that you want. And even on the one thing I will say is probably on the outside, I don't look like I'm a person that's making those decisions or taking on that responsibility or continuously trying to make certain sacrifices, understanding that there's going to be better benefit that comes out of it. But what I will say is, it's still so worth it. It's still so worth it at the end of the day, right? You're misunderstood, but in the same breath, it's like once you realize what certain people value, you're glad to be misunderstood by those people who don't value what you value. And like I said, for certain people, man, in the disconnect, right? I pray for y'all, man. I pray that you can find some type of value structure. I pray that you edit your behaviors, you edit your habits, you edit your identities. And if you don't, just know you're going to be living the same year over and over again for a long time, a lot longer than what you should have lived it for. So, the curse of young competence. Is this something that you personally feel affinity to, right? Are you going through this same thing? Do you have these same type of feelings towards the people that are around you? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you get along with everybody very, very well. Maybe you don't see yourself as dumbing yourself down. Maybe you're willing to be, I'm not even going to say naive because we all know right from wrong, but let's just say you're continuing to choose the wrong decision. You're continuing to uphold the wrong identity or the wrong habit just to fit in, right? So, for the people that are feeling this specific way, my biggest piece of advice to you is this. Stay different, right? It'll pay off. You're going to find people that think just like you, right? It's only a matter of time before you find people that are just like you. And for me, hopefully you can contribute to my YouTube community. And I also have a school community that just started up. So if you do want to look into that, it should be in the link down below. So if you're interested in that, tap in with that for sure. But yeah, I really do I do enjoy building a community where people who think like this can come to a certain conversation and actually have more mature conversations that actually push the needle. And for me, I would like for me in my own personal life to have a lot more of those conversations. But quite frankly, the amount of people that I can actually have that to, and who actually will fully act on that, is very, very limited, unfortunately. But yeah, I feel like people. It's not very hard for people. It's not very hard to create a value structure, right? This one basic thing that I think your decisions should be based off of, right? Your decisions shouldn't be based off of a feeling or of something that's very, very temporary, like a feeling, right? It should be evaluated for something that's more long term, right? It's not this instant gratification that you're seeking, right? Obviously, I'm sure you watching this, you've heard about this concept of instant gratification versus delayed gratification, but you got to look long term. I feel like, and that's another issue of the people that, who are young, and I'm not going to say young and competent, they're just young, is they're kind of trapped in this headspace, in this mindset of being young, instead of understanding that it's going to be a matter of time before there's going to be consequences to the certain actions that you take. There's certain actions that you don't take as well. So for me, you create a value structure yourself. You'll create one over time. Everybody has a value structure. You must begin to question. You must begin to observe other people and say, well, this is their value structure. This is what they think. This is what they believe. This is what they do. This is who they are. Now, why? Why are they like that? What are they? What is Yeah, what do they value, right? Once you begin to understand that a lot of people don't value shit, or they value the wrong things, or even then, it's like there's certain people that value the same things that I value, yet they also value things that I don't value as much, right? So like, let's just say, for example, right? I value trying to elevate myself, right? Intellectually, trying to elevate myself through content, through experience. I really, really look forward to these things, right? There's somebody else that can also truly say and honestly believe it themselves that they are honestly interested in the same things that I'm interested in. But here's the thing: they still value video games or masturbation or whatever, right? They still value these things, yet they will act on these things, right? And that's the problem, right? There's a little bit of a value contradiction. That's what I like to call it, right? Where you value two things, but yet you still find yourself making the decision that falls in line with the things in which you don't value as much. You value both things, and now it would make sense to put one on top of the other, but instead you're almost flipping the pyramid of values. So you should have some type of judgment. You should have some type of remorse. You should have some type of guilt when you do make those decisions. And it's the problem is when you're just young, you don't feel the repercussions of those actions because they're not an immediate thing. But the curse of young competence is going to think much more farther ahead than just the present moment or just this year or next year, right? I've been truly captured by the vision that I have for who I am at 25, at 30, at 40, right? And I make decisions today that I know will affect the behaviors, the actions, the identity, and the habits that I will uphold much later on in this life. And am I getting closer to the type of character and the type of identity and the type of lifestyle that I want to live, that makes sense for me in my life? Am I making the decisions right now? Like, for example, right? One of the things that I valued, that I understood that some people had, and obviously most people don't have, is a day one woman. To understand what that means, and to be fortunate enough to have that, right? I understood thoroughly that's something that I wanted and something that I hopefully would be able to get if I dedicated enough time in order to build up my skills, where if that woman came around, she'd want to stick around. And that is something that I had did very, very early on. I understood that I wanted a day one woman, and if I wanted a day one woman, I would need to know what that woman looked like, right? What are the certain character traits she would need in order to fulfill that? And once you can find that, then things are a lot easier, right? That's a decision that I had made in the present, or this is like 2 years ago. That is going to be something that I'm going to be getting the benefits from, right? It's no longer a liability, right? I'm not investing my time, my energy into liability, right? Which would be, I guess, dating or just messing around, sleeping around, whatever, right? Liability. Now this is an asset, right? For me to find a woman who's a day one woman, that is an asset that will constantly pay dividends throughout the years, right? You'll be able to spend more time with somebody that you love much longer, and that is obviously ideal, right? Anyone that has a brain can understand this, but to be able to understand that you need to be able to find that as early as you possibly can, because you can't put a price on somebody. You can't put a price on anybody, but you can't put even a measurement of value on something that is like that, right? There's people that have everything in the world right now, but yet they don't have a day one woman. That's one thing they can never get. They can never get that. You can't go back in time and get a day one woman. You can't do that. You can't where you are right now. Let's just say people who are successful in their 30s and 40s, right? There's no way they can have everything in the world. They can have everything in the world except a day one woman. That is what I value. I value what those people wish that they had, right? Maybe it's being able to spend time with family. Maybe it's being able to create a family of your own, right? Some of these people that have everything, or at least conventionally they have everything, but yet they're still they don't have everything. And of course, no one can really have everything. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna tell you right now, there's gonna be certain things that you're gonna wish you had much later on that you can get and attain right now. So what do those look like? What do you envision your lifestyle looking like? These are the questions that I will constantly ask every so often on this podcast. But yeah, the curse of young competence, man. All I'm gonna say is this, man. It's a very, very interesting life decision to be making decisions, to be making sacrifices, right? To be adopting more responsibility than you see other people around you making. But in the grand scheme of life, there's almost no advantage to saying, "Oh yeah, I had this experience," but yeah, you were still slacking because you could have been developing something that's much greater, that's going to last much longer than this current moment. And like I said, I'm not going to sit up here and say I'm the most mature 23-year-old that ever existed, but what I will say is there's plenty of 23-year-olds that are my age, obviously. They don't think, they don't move with the intentionality that I do. And like I said, they don't do anything that's going to push the needle, right? They don't do anything that's going to push the needle. So maturing too fast, it's a blessing and a curse, but hopefully you can use it to your advantage, right? For me, the curse of young competence is something that I'm always going to use to my advantage, right? Of course, I'm not saying, don't have a good time. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying understand what you're doing at the very least, right? There's people that don't, right? They want to be naive, or they keep putting off this judgment of themselves, right? At the very least, if you're doing something that you know that's not in the best, that's in your best favor for the long term, at least know this is exactly what I'm doing, and instead of just living and kind of being a victim to that experience, right? Because I feel like having that knowledge and still not making the right decision, that is an interesting decision in itself, because at least you're aware, right? And the problem is people lacking awareness, right? They lack awareness, so they don't really move the ways in which they would like, or rather they even know to like. So yeah. But other than that, let me get some water, and then I'll see what else I got, man. But yes, I would say the curse of young competence. If you're a person on your self-improvement journey, this is something that eventually is going to happen to you. You're going to understand that people have been making the same decisions for the last couple of years, right? They haven't been making any progress, truly. Physically, spiritually, financially, mentally, they haven't been making as much progress as they would like. And like I said, those same people wonder why. And it's because you're doing the same thing that you did when you were fucking 15 years old. Of course, there's no progress that's made. Of course, you're not going to feel this progression. Of course, because you're just doing the same thing over and over again. For me, that's not good enough for me, right? You should be on the constant evolution. You should be on the constant grind of trying to figure out who you are, what you're doing, what are you doing here? What are you meant to do? What's your purpose? Figuring those things out and finding more and more ways for you to embody this. That is the ideal. That's what makes sense to me. That's what's made sense to me for years. Is how can I fulfill that? Because that's the only reason we're here, right? We're here to fulfill a purpose. Some people don't know what their purpose is. Some people are just now finding it out. Some people don't even know that you need a purpose, right? And that's just what it is. But hopefully you can figure it out. This is the curse of young competence. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you leave a like, subscribe. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, if you do want to get involved with my community and the people in which I talk to, tap in with the YouTube community as well as my school community as well that I just had started up. And if there's something that you specifically want more detail on or more information that you think that I might know about, feel free to to ask about it because I'm more than willing to have conversations for sure. I'll read this last comment, then I'll end it. Having a high level of competency at such a young age is invaluable. It's like playing chess blindfolded while other motherfuckers are playing instructional checkers. Exactly. And that's exactly right. But in the same breath, like I said, some motherfuckers know that they're making progress and some people don't. They don't. Some people think they're on a treadmill and some people are actually out in the wild running. So, yeah, it's a different, bro. It's a different game, man. It's a different game. It's a different level to the game. But that's all I have to say for today's episode. Today's episode 243, we discussed the curse of young competence. Make sure you follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, and on Spotify, as well as on Kick. Much more lives coming up. Next podcast is going to be on hopefully Saturday. And on Monday, this upcoming week, I'll be also going live as well. Just chopping it with you guys, catching up, and hopefully here to have a good time. So tap in with those next 2 days for sure. And other than that, I'll leave you guys off with the podcast motto: welcome to the winning team. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. And like I said, tap in the next podcast on Saturday. Y'all have a good night, man.